Joshua, chapter 16, starting in verse 4. The sons of Joseph, Manasseh, and Ephraim received their inheritance. Now this was the territory of the sons of Ephraim according to their families. The border of their inheritance eastward was Ataroth Adar, as far as the upper Beth Horon. Then the border went westward at Mikmethath on the north, and the border turned about eastward to Tanath, Shiloh, and continued beyond it to the east of Genoa. It went down from Genoa to Ataroth and to Nara, then reached Jericho and came out to the Jordan. From Tapua, the border continued westward to the brook of Kana, and it ended at the sea. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the sons of Ephraim according to their families, together with the cities which were set apart for the sons of Ephraim in the midst of the inheritance of the sons of Manasseh, all the cities with their villages. But they did not drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. So the Canaanites live in the midst of Ephraim to this day, and they became forced laborers. This is a description of Ephraim receiving their inheritance, receiving the land and the land of promise, receiving the land promised to them by Moses. And they take care of everything except this last note. But they did not drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. So the Canaanites live in the midst of Ephraim to this day, and they became forced laborers. What does that mean? It means that an enemy is living in the land. It means that someone that God had devoted to destruction is living in the land. It means that the commandment of God to destroy the Canaanites was not completely fulfilled, and instead they weren't able to destroy them. They did not drive them out, and so they made them work for them. They made their presence beneficial to them. What's interesting about this is we see another instance like this where the people of Israel are not able to succeed. And it's in the life of Joshua. If we go back to Joshua 7, it says, "But the sons of Israel acted unfaithfully in regard to the things under the ban." The ban was when they took Jericho. God said everything in Jericho is under a ban. You cannot take anything for Jericho for yourself. For Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, from the tribe of Judah, took some of the things under the ban. Therefore the anger of the Lord burned against the sons of Israel. Now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth Aven, east of Bethel, and said to them, "Go up and spy out the land." So the men went up and spied out Ai. They returned to Joshua and said to him, "Do not let all the people go up. Only about 2,000 or 3,000 men need go up to Ai. Do not make all the people toil up there, for they are few." So about 3,000 men from the people went up there, but they fled from the men of Ai. The men of Ai struck down 36 of their men and pursued them from the gate as far as Shebarim, and struck them down on the descent, so the hearts of the people melted and became as water. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell to the earth on his face from the ark of the Lord of the covenant, before the ark of the Lord, until the evening, both he and the elders, and they put dust on their heads. Joshua said, "Alas, O Lord God, why did you ever bring this people over the Jordan, only to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? If only we had been willing to dwell beyond the Jordan. O Lord, what can I say, since Israel has turned their back before their enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear of it, and they will surround us and cut off our name from the earth. And what will you do for your great name?" So the Lord said to Joshua, "Rise up. Why is it that you have fallen on your face?" Joshua lost this battle because there was a command given to all Israel: you can't take anything from Jericho, and one soldier took something from Jericho. But here's the piece, we're not focusing on that today. Here's the piece that's interesting. Joshua never consults the Lord. Now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth Aven, east of Bethel, and said to them, "Go and spy out the land." So the men went up and spied out Ai. They returned to Joshua and said to him, "Do not let all the people go up. Only about 2,000 or 3,000 men need to go up to Ai. Do not make all the people toil up there, for they are few." It's a tricky subject. We see in other places in the book of Joshua that the Lord was instructing him on how to do things. And at other times, it seems like Joshua is just going out and winning. And I think this is reflective of my own life. I think that what happened is Joshua won at Jericho. They beat the people who were beyond the Jordan, Sihon, and Bashan, king of the Amorites. They won those victories. So then, and I'm not saying Joshua was wrong in doing this. He doesn't consult the Lord on what to do about Ai. And he doesn't know because he doesn't consult. He doesn't know that there's sin in the camp. And because of that sin, they lose the battle. How does this relate to Ephraim and not getting their inheritance? I think what I don't see in Joshua 16:10, but they did not drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. So the Canaanites live in the midst of Ephraim to this day, and they became forced laborers. I don't know why they didn't drive them out. That's what I'm missing. Did they just see that there were a lot of them and they had taken enough of the land that they went to the leaders and were like, here's the deal. We can wipe you out or you can be forced laborers. And they're like, we'll be forced laborers. Or did they try to wipe them out and they failed? I don't know. We don't get it from the text. But what I definitely don't see is Ephraim going to the Lord and saying, Lord, the Canaanites of Gezer are many, or they could be great forced laborers, or we're tired, or there's no conversation with God. And so the Canaanites live in the midst of Ephraim to this day, and they became forced laborers. That wasn't God's plan. God's plan was to destroy all the Canaanites. These Canaanites in the land become a snare to Israel. They become a trap to Israel. God even says at one point that he's going to leave the Canaanites they didn't drive out in the land so they can test Israel regularly to make sure that they'll follow God. What do we learn from this? What do we learn from Joshua? What do we learn from Ephraim? Ephraim's not the only tribe, by the way. I think every tribe failed to fully capture their inheritance. And so what do I learn? What do I see? I don't know that it was wrong for Joshua to try to have victory without talking to God. I don't know that, because we see him definitely having tons of victory without a direct statement about talking to God. If I look at Jesus' life, I don't have many instances when it explicitly and specifically says that Jesus went and talked to his Father. Now, Jesus said, I only say what my Father tells me to say. So there's a connection enough with his Father that Jesus knows what to say and when to say it. So I don't know if that's an ongoing relationship where moment by moment he's about to heal someone and he's just got this relationship with God where he's hearing the voice of his Father. I don't know if his Father is teaching him, listen, here's how you speak with kindness, with gentleness, with mercy, with self-control. And so it's not so much that God gave him the exact words, but God gave him the heart behind the words. I don't know. What I do know is this. When Jesus went to face his greatest battle, he clearly went to talk to his Father. And we have that recorded. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he went to his dad. He prayed 3 times that the cup would be removed from him, and his Father's response was no. His Father's response was to send angels to strengthen Jesus. Why did Jesus need strengthening? Because God's answer was, no, son, there is no other way. But you notice the next day Jesus isn't struggling, and he conquers the cross. Conquers the grave. What I see in the life of Joshua is he failed. And people died because of it. There were serious consequences because he failed. But then he falls on his face. Now, in another episode, we're probably going to talk about Joshua's conversation with God. But he's at least crying out to the Lord. He's at least bearing his heart before God. He's at least asking God, what happened? Why is this happening? What's going on? He's at least talking to God about it. And the Lord gives him an answer. And then they have victory. After he deals with the sin, they have victory. And I just look at Ephraim and I wonder, what if they cried out to God? What if they had gone back to Eleazar the priest and said, here's our thoughts on these Canaanites. They'd be great forced laborers. We can't beat them. What does the Lord say? How does that relate to me? I think that there are areas of my life that I think are under control. But I haven't eradicated the problem. I haven't destroyed the problem. I haven't completely annihilated the problem. It's a forced laborer. What does that mean? It's under check, but it comes out every now and again as something that I consider to be useful. I mean, a great example. Something just happened with my wife. I got real angry at her. I don't like being honest with you guys. Yelled at her. I hardly ever yell. It's super rare. I mean, I can be harsh, I can be stern. Yelling is out of the norm. But this time, for some reason, I chose to yell. Wrong. I mean, super wrong. Like, just for everybody listening, hyper bad wrong. My son was there. I apologized to him as well. And I told her that was completely wrong, that I yelled at you. It was inappropriate. I'm so sorry. I apologized to my son. But my problem is that I think anger is a forced laborer right now. I think that I have a measure of success over anger. And I think that I'm not sure that I'm like using anger, but I do see myself being motivated by it sometimes. And then sometimes, even if it's not an expressed outward anger, that motivation of anger has a positive result. But here's my struggle. The Bible, we do have, this is another touchy subject. So it says, the anger of man does not accomplish the righteousness of God. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Galatians, I believe, I can't remember if it's Galatians, tells us to get rid of all anger. So there is hypothetically an anger that actually accomplishes something. However, we've got to be clear that it can't be our anger. It's got to be the Lord's anger. And one of the keys to knowing whether or not it's the Lord's anger is how long suffering have you been with this thing? God told Israel that your people will be in slavery in Egypt for 400 years because the sin of the Canaanite has not reached its full. What does that mean? God was being patient before bringing judgment and wrath. Wrath is an outpouring of anger, a righteous outpouring of anger. He waited 400 years. And we look at the example of Jesus when he goes to the temple. So a lot of people point to Jesus going to the temple as an example of righteous anger. And it might be. It says zeal, doesn't say anger, but it could be. Here's the thing, though. He was like 33 when that happened. If you figure that he knew what the will of his father was, and when he was 12 years old, he knew that he must be in his father's house, then from the age of 12 to 33, he's going to the temple several times a year. His family went there to dedicate him. His family went again for a feast. So we know that they went to the temple whenever the festivals were. So he's going 3 to 6 times a year to the temple, at least. And he sees the money changers for 21 years. He knows the will of his father. He knows this is his father's house. He knows they're set up in the court of the Gentiles. That's what I was taught. The place where the Gentiles are allowed to come and worship. He knows it. But he waits 21 years before whipping everyone out of the temple. He waits till he has the authority as a rabbi to go do such a thing. He's the rabbi of rabbis, and he has the authority now. Why do I share all of this? Anger, I think, might be a forced laborer for me, which means that it's under control until it's not under control, because it's not eradicated. I guarantee you that was not God that just got mad at my wife. That was me in my flesh getting mad at my wife in front of my son. And if I do that enough times, it's going to teach him to use anger. It's going to teach him that anger is a forced laborer that can serve you. This morning, have we taken the promised land? The promised land is really a typology for the Christian life. The enemies in the promised land are all the flesh that needs to be destroyed. Have we taken the promised land today? Do we have any forced laborers in our lives? Do we? Then let us seek the Lord. Let us cry out to him, so that those forced laborers, we would be given wisdom on how to destroy them. So that the holiness of God can permeate our lives, and there will be no enemy living in the land. Because don't miss it. The Canaanites were enemies of Israel. Forced laborers aren't your friends. They're slaves until they find an opportunity to rise up. And then they become a real problem. The problem with forced laborers and the Canaanites is that they also would have worshipped other gods. So basically, we're creating a foothold for the enemy. We're creating a space where the devil may be able to operate. I told a friend recently who was struggling with something. Be careful what you tolerate in your home, because it's what you're tolerating in your kids. And even though they may be your forced laborers, what happens if one day those forced laborers conquer your kids? What if they conquer your children? Let me take this back. My friend wasn't struggling. He's having great victory. He's doing an incredible job. He's growing. But I told him, be careful what you tolerate. Because what if those forced laborers one day conquer your children? And you will suffer on that day. Ask the Lord today if there are any forced laborers in your life that you need His wisdom for how to get rid of. You don't need forced laborers. You just need the Spirit and the presence and the Word. May the Lord bless you today. May He bless you. May He keep you. May He cause His face to shine upon you. Amen.